All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second to the last of the webinar series for career technical education. I am excited here to introduce two of our esteemed presenters, Susan Tiedemann, who is at the College and Career Academy Support Network at the Graduate School of Education in UC Berkeley, is here to present with programs consultant Maria Burright, who supports California Partnership Academies in the state of California. So we're going to appreciate it if you can put your questions in the Q&A today instead of in the chat, and we will be able to get to those at the end of the presentation. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters. So thank you again for attending, and we will begin.
Thank you, Allison. This is Maria Burright, and we're going to go over today about virtual advisory and stakeholder meeting. People use many different terms for these advisory groups. Some use committees, some call them advisory councils, some call them advisory board. All are correct, but during this webinar, we're going to use the term advisory board.
Hello, everyone. This is Susan Tiedemann. We have a California Partnership Academy statewide board, and at their first meeting, they talked about what they wanted to be called, and they came up with the word council. They wanted to be an advisory council. They thought that that reflected best what they were going to do with the state people in state service. So we're going to use the term board, but committee works, council works. Maybe you call it your advisory. We just decided we'd land on the word board for this presentation.
Okay, advantages of the virtual meeting. One is to protect your health. Due to COVID, we would say to hold a virtual meeting, it's to protect your health. Also, as you're moving forward, there's no cost for travel or time. And we have found out by doing it virtual that we had more members tend to participate in it because there's time allotted without the travel and the cost.
Before the meeting, it's important that you have a clearly defined set of objectives and outcomes. We realize that many of you already have an advisory council, advisory board, but some of you may be new coordinators or administrators. So we want to give you some ideas about how you might engage your board. I hope you're not having your advisory board because it's required, but because these people, these advisors, are people who can help you identify and achieve your objectives for student achievement. I believe personally that establishing an advisory board is one of the most difficult things I've done because volunteers have other obligations. A few years ago, Tim Rainey, who I believe he's still the executive director of the California Workforce Development Board in Sacramento, came and spoke to our advisory council. And I learned this new term, what's in it for me? And he spoke to us about the human condition and volunteers. We volunteer because we care about something, we want to help somebody. Some of your members are hoping for future employers. Some of the employees, some of them volunteer because they really support their community and they want to support the school and your students. But even when they volunteer, it's still time away from their work, and time is money. So one of the most important things you can do, especially virtually, when you're not going to see people face to face, is to make sure that they're engaged by the objectives and outcomes of the meeting. And so, think, well, in the real world before COVID, we were really focused on the meeting because you had body language, you could see the people, you could shake hands, you could even get a hug. But now we're in the COVID world. So this before meeting planning is really, really critical.
As you're creating your advisory board, there's several things you want to keep in mind. One is having an effective chair and a co-chair. These are your driving force of your advisory board. These are the ones that's going to help you engage your advisory board. And you also need strong facilitators. They again are going to work co-hand with your chair, you and your co-chair. And the members that are on your board, you also need a reason for them to join. They need to know why they're there. How can they help your CTE pathway? For example, when I work with my California Partnership State Advisory Board Chair, Jeff, we're working together, and we work together from prior months to get the agenda all the way through to the end. And we do this by we begin creating agenda. And the first thing we do is we review the notes prior from our last meeting. And these include all resource links. And we design our agenda from what we discussed on our last meeting. So we will have, clear documentation, supporting materials. All of that is in our notes from our last meeting, and we start designing the agenda from there. We also add a calendar invite. And I have done this recently with my own advisory committee, and we found out with a calendar invite, it has helped them remember that the date, the time. They're not looking through an email like, oh, I have to have this advisory committee. Where is it in my email? It also is a place to hold all of your documents that you want to present during the meeting. When Jeff and I design our agenda, we look for things to encourage inclusion of the members. How can we get them to interact? How can we get them connected? What is interesting information that we wanted to provide for them to all of our board members? It's not excluding anybody, it's including all. And again, we're going back at what is in it for me. When we do this, we schedule a meeting 2 to 3 months in advance, maybe even more. We send them the electronic invite and we invite all the members. We also will know at that time approximately how many members will be attending, because they will respond with, they're going to attend, they're going to decline, they're going to a tentative. And with that, we found out there's more people coming to our meeting. A month before that, we decide on the agenda and the material for the members. We review the material for the members with advisory chairs, the co-chair and the chair. As we go through it, we see what's important material from the last meeting and what we can share with the members for questions and addition. It depends how many times you have a meeting during this year. Some CTE pathways have it once a year. Some have it 3 or 4 times during the year. It just depends what it is that you do and how you create your agenda. We also, Jeff, Susan, and I discussed in the agenda the materials to make sure what is the why of the meeting and to ensure we're engaging all parties. They're just not attending to attend, to check off the box. We want it to be where everyone feels like they got something with this. Then we go 10 days to 2 weeks before. We review and finalize the agenda and the materials with the chair. Then we prepare the final agenda and materials. We remind the attendees about the meeting, what the date and the time is. Although it's on their calendar, we still send an email invitation to them. And then we ask them to review any items on the agenda. And then we create a list of those who we are confirmed.
This is some information that Maria and I think is really important. We've had some interesting experiences with some of our academy teams lately on virtual meetings. So this is before the meeting, but we're calling it the backup plan to deal with any issues from the new virtual world. So before the meeting, and I would do it the day before, but at least a couple hours before, test everything. Even if you used it last week and it worked great, test everything. And then I would ask a colleague or a board member that you know well to be a co-facilitator who can take over. if you do have problems. The things that can happen, you lose your connection. Yesterday in a large meeting with Academy teams, Maria's screen froze, but I was able to take over until her screen recovered. Plan to use your phone if all else fails and you're leading a meeting. Have a backup plan so you can get on the phone and get back to your meeting. Use the chat for sign in, and if you have a Q&A, that's great. If you don't, then you can put questions and suggestions in the chat. And a good thing is, and we've all tried to do this, I don't think it's possible to manage the chat and run a meeting. It's too distracting, even if you're the best multitasker in the world. So ask a colleague to manage the chat for you, and then arrange for that person to have some way of getting your attention. If there's something in the chat that you need to take care of right away, have some kind of a system so they can let you know about that. You also need a note taker for even though you're going to record your meeting, I think it's helpful to have a note taker as well. And I think that the same person who's managing the chat can be the note taker, but that depends on you and your team. And I like to involve as many people as possible. So maybe you have board members that would like to do this. I've been on the statewide board council for so long that I've gotten to know some of our business partners really well. And there's one partner who likes to manage the chat. But again, it kind of depends on your members. How well do you know them? How long have you worked with them? What's their role? And I know that some of you have the rest of your teaching team participate and some of you don't. Again, that's just personal, but you have people I know that would help you with the chat and taking some notes. Maria's taught me another thing that is very helpful. We use our cell phones. We did Big Summer Institute last summer, and we had a lot of people presenting in the same time. And so we used our cell phones to communicate with each other when things weren't going well, or we needed to tell somebody right away. So I think it's helpful to have your cell phone right next to you, and you can text the person who's doing the chat or someone else in the meeting. Another thing are the latecomers. You need to plan for latecomers somehow on the agenda. You don't want them to interrupt the meeting, but you do want to acknowledge them. So as you look at your agenda, look for times when you can stop and say, has anyone joined us? And then the other thing I kind of struggle with is the waiting room. I really don't like the waiting room. To me, it seems like I invited these people to a party and then I made them wait on the porch till I let them in. But I do know that the waiting room is a safety issue, a security issue, and I think everybody knows that. And so you probably, depending on the size of your advisory board, you probably can go ahead with a waiting room and people will understand. So you've done all this, you've tested everything, you're all ready to go. And so these are some things to help you during, and again, this is a virtual meeting. So as we did today, have some kind of a welcome on the screen. So that, you know, sometimes people come on early because they want to get settled or they're going to do something else, but they log into your meeting. So some kind of a welcome on the screen is great. And I think it's a good idea to play music. You can call up some music on your cell phone and just play some music. So if someone did come early, they know they're in the right meeting. Ask them to sign into to the chat. And of course, you're going to begin and end on time. And I would, if I were running the meeting, I would get on myself at least 15 minutes ahead of time. Again, you're testing everything. It's important to have a timekeeper. You could have a stopwatch available or a big clock that you can look at. But if you have a colleague who can help you be the timekeeper, you want to keep your people engaged. You don't want them looking at their watches, wondering when it's going to end. So I like to put the times right on the agenda, and then that helps people stay on time. So having a timekeeper, I think, is really helpful. The ground rules when we're working with partners, how do we do this? We want people to mute their microphones, but and you probably can do it. You know, if you're using Zoom and you're the host, you can mute everybody. But it's like the waiting room. People might think that was rude. So I think the best way to handle this is to talk about background noise and just ask people to mute when they're not talking. And be aware that depending, some people's internet speeds are better than others. So if you do the muting and you can talk to people about that, you avoid that voiceover, which is so annoying when you have a big meeting. So I think some simple ground rules like muting the microphone, not talking over each other, however you want to do that. We have a whole page of Zoom norms that we used this summer with the Partnership Academies. And we've used it again. And I actually used it with our team at the Graduate School of Education. So I know Maria or I would be happy to send that to you if that's something you think would help. Because you can't see people, I mean, you can see people, but because I think when you do introductions, the best thing to do, instead of waiting for somebody to jump in, oh, I'll jump in, is to do it in alphabetical order. And that way, you know, people know when it's that turn. Again, have a plan for latecomers. Hopefully they'll all be there by the time you're still doing introductions. Then it's a good idea to check to see, even though you sent it, does everyone have the agenda? Do they have all the materials that they need for the meeting? And then finally, you're going to review the agenda one more time and see if there are any changes or additions. I like the idea after you kind of have gotten started, even though you're doing it virtually, the idea of short presentations followed by time discussions. And so you can kind of go virtually around the table and you need to be able to call people out by name because they may know each other. Something I've had to learn as a teacher and doing these meetings, it's okay to have silent time. It's okay to sometimes just everybody's kind of thinking about stuff, and it's okay to have some time when nobody's talking. And then at the end of the meeting, you want to review and maybe do a screen share of any action items. So you had this great meeting, everybody's engaged. Did you decide to do something? If you did, that needs to be really emphasized either by you or maybe you put up a screen share.
So also during the meeting, you're going to monitor the chat, or you're going to have someone monitor the chat. And chat can be used for many different things, not only for questions and answers, it's also to engage members. You can continue to ask for questions or comments in this area, but one of my favorite things to do is brainstorm ideas. So we have an idea and, you know, instead of everyone talking or waiting for someone to answer, you can use that. So put your brainstorms ideas in there. Therefore, you can also save it. You can screen share new ideas that they had just put in the chat, and you can engage this through the group thinking. So chat can be used for many different ways besides a Q&A, which I absolutely love to do. You're going to ask members to also add or give an opinion through emails or thoughts, because sometimes it comes after the fact. After they've done the meeting, that aha moment comes like, oh, I should have told them about this. Give them that opportunity. It says, you know, if you think of something after the meeting, please send me an email. Also, ask again, as Susan stated before, ask for volunteer members to assist you with the virtual meeting, because it is a different way. There's a lot of fluid parts to go through, and it's really good to work as a team and have good team members assisting you through this. So we're going to move on to how to strengthen connection among participants. This is the hardest part. It's virtual. It's not like you're gathering together and you're shaking hands and you're chit-chatting and you're eating food or whatever the situation may be. It's different. You feel that distance. You're in your home, your office, your area, and they are too. So there's a little distance to be felt. So how can you make that connection, and how can you strengthen among your team members that you would normally get if they're together? You provide time for the advisors to get to learn about each other. You can do individual introductions with a time limit. For instance, we did, you know, in 30 seconds, tell us something interesting about your CTE or CPA pathway. You can do the same thing about your business. Introduce yourself, tell me something interesting or engaging or what we need to know. Ask them for one thing interesting about them or their company. And then have them share any updates. What's going on in their world? What is new? How are you handling this virtual new world? So get them engaged and get them talking, because what one person's doing, the other person is probably having the same thing, and they can share it. Create ways to have a casual conversation. You know your team, create a way to get that casual conversation. Use your screen for sharing and brainstorming. You can bring a PowerPoint up and then share it and just type in what they're saying. So we're going to engage your members with active conversation. Susan?
I'm here. We're going to engage our members in active conversation. Again, this virtual meeting is really hard because there isn't that before sharing things, passing pictures around. Some of our statewide members go out for lunch after our meetings, and we can't do that anymore. So this is where I think we really have to work hard on active conversation. So setting aside some time, sometimes, if you know your members really well, you can take 10 minutes at the beginning and just do a casual conversation. Another thing, if you have a long meeting, if you have a 2-hour meeting, you might want to stop in the middle and say, okay, we're going to take 10 minutes and just, talk. Never get into the active conversations at the end of the meeting. You might have chatty Kathy who's off topic and it's time to end the meeting, and you end up cutting off a conversation. Getting this active conversation going is, again, enlist the help of 2 or 3 of your key members. Find some people that are really good at this and let them take over the meeting and have a kind of active conversation. You, of course, are going to have a topic that you're going to focus on. So again, this is very difficult, but what I've found is that we're all having the same struggles with this virtual, and so everybody is working hard to make it work. So just saying to people, I want to have a conversation, you'll find that the members of your committee will really, they'll jump up and really help you. Yesterday, we had over 100 teachers on a meeting, and I was to put the teachers into meeting rooms. And I had the room set up, I had the numbers and the names, and when I turned the rooms on, it didn't work. Out of the 100 people, it worked for 17. But you know what? Everybody came back to the big meeting room, and everybody just picked up, and we weren't able to do that activity. And so we had an active conversation, and we had, I noticed that everybody was just trying to help. They weren't saying, oh, that didn't work. They were really just trying to help. I think it's also important, we're not going to be in COVID forever, and we are going to be able to get together and see each other. So I think if, depending on your situation, I think it might be good in every meeting that you have to have some look to the future and some plans for face-to-face. So that could be that they're going to see student presentations, and you could also do that virtually, or you're setting a time in the future when they're coming to your school or they're going to make a visit. So we're all in this together, yeah, but we're not always going to be virtual. We are going to get out into the world one of these days. And I think that's an important way to engage your committee.
So now that you went through the meeting, what do you do after the meeting? What we do is we debrief with our chairs, our co-chairs, our co-facilitators, note takers, and to find out how the meeting went. Everyone has an opinion, and everyone has things that we need to realize, things that we need to change. And we see what changes do we need to make? How do we make them? What is necessary to be made? Things that need to be completed, the action items, to-do lists, individual responsibility. Develop concise, complete notes and email them within a week. Don't wait because if you wait more than a week, your members are going to forget what happened. The quicker you're able to do it, the better it will be for them. Focus on action items when you do it. Again, the action items, the to-do list, the individual responsibility, focus on those items when you send out those notes. Follow up with members who did not participate. This is really important. We all have something that could keep us from a meeting that we really want to go to, but follow up on them. Let them know how it went. If you recorded it, share that recording with them, share the notes with them, send an email, reach out to them, let them know they were missed and their opinion and their information is valued. And put that in your notes. Let them know, you know, oh, that was great. I'm going to add it to the notes saying that you had emailed this to me. And begin planning and scheduling the next meeting. That is important. Even if it's next year, it's important you start planning now for that new meeting while everything is fresh. So this is the end of our webinar. Again, my name is Maria Burright. I work for the Department of Education. If you have any questions, you can email me at mburright@cde.ca.gov. If you are using this as a professional development, you can take a picture of this slide. It says that you completed this meeting, and it's a verification of the completion of this webinar.
And Maria, we're going to go ahead and address some questions in the chat now. So I'll go ahead and facilitate that. And the first question, well, first of all, someone asked if you could put the certificate slide back up as we're going through Q&A, just because it was kind of
time. Yeah.
So the first question is from Annette, and she asks, besides the agenda, what are some examples of materials that you give to your advisory boards during the meetings?
We have, well, for the state, we have given, Susan?
Sure.
Besides the agenda, we also have provided them documents that we had to review for our strategic plan.
We always give them a fact sheet. Like your advisory members want to know, for example, if now I speak for academies because that's what I know, but if you have an academy, how many kids are in the academy? What classes are they taking? Are they getting any certificates? It's kind of like developing a fact sheet. You're kind of marketing yourself to your advisory committee. And then we had at the beginning, and we need to get it out again, we had a kind of like a sheet of things that they could help us with. And our advisory board has been very helpful. I mean, when we were in danger of losing our funding, our advisory board members were there to testify for us. But it's, you know, what are the things your kids are doing? Do you have a brochure that you can give them? We have a strategic plan that we keep going over and over. So it's that kind of thing to get them engaged.
Also, sometimes there's things that your advisory board member would like to share with the team.
Right.
And you would put that in there.
And I'm going to go ahead and remind the audience, and we did leave quite a bit of time for questions, so I'm going to go ahead and remind the audience to please put your questions in the Q&A. I will not be addressing questions that are being dropped in the chat. So I see that there are questions going into the chat. If you could repeat those into the Q&A, I promise we will get to those. Thank you. Thank you, Maria and Susan. The next question is from Carrie, and she said, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but I find it important that all digital pages you plan to share or discuss are ready to present prior to starting the meeting. So this also links back to another question that I saw about sending all materials to your advisors in advance. Do you have any tips on that? And comments on that?
We have tried it a couple different ways. We have tried it, we sent it in an email, we put it in an email as an attachment, and I also have attached it to the calendar invite. What the response I got back from our advisory committee is the attachment in the calendar invite has worked best, because they're able to go to that calendar invite, not look for the email. It's in that invite, and then they're able to download them as we go along or print them, whatever they find necessary. That has been our best.
So, Maria, I'm going to piggyback on that and I'm going to just re-emphasize the importance of using the calendar invite tool when dealing with industry and actually anybody right now in the state.
Right now.
So instead of sending emails, as Maria mentioned, and I'm so glad you did, things are getting so lost in email that the calendar invite is become my lifeline truly. And so I would definitely second that. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Thank you, Allison.
Let's see here. I think I got that one. So how do we get the presenter's contact information? Oh, okay. So I had put it in the chat as well as it being on the last slide. I will go ahead and retype, or actually you could probably switch out of this slide now, Maria, and go back to your email slide. I think that would probably be the best. So anybody who has specific needs, so for instance, Maria mentioned certain resources she's used in advisory meetings that have been successful. I have stuff from advisory meetings that have been successful. Feel free to email either of us or both of us and we can share those with you. Again, there's samples from when we were working in the field. And so I think they're not like official CDE documents so much as they are just when we were both running SHIP at our own sites. Unless, Maria, you have more stuff.
I'm currently working statewide one with the CPA, so I'm still doing it. But again, it's not official CDE, as Allison said, and thank you for pointing that out, Allison. Susan and I have been doing this for over a year, and she's been doing it longer than I have with the advisory council, for the statewide advisory council. So nothing is official CDE material. I cannot emphasize that more. It's just, I can share what works for us. Just like Allison, it's what works for us.
And so again, you're welcome to reach out to us via email to get whatever tools we have that we've found successful.
Most definitely.
Okay.
And many of these things, as we are moving forward into going back into the seat base where everyone can meet again in public, you can use these same things as a meeting in person, many of the items listed in here. So it can go both ways.
So there's another question, or this is a good question actually. Are there any resources or tips you have for finding new advisory board members during COVID?
That is a great question. And Susan can chime in as well. This has been going on with our CPAs, is finding those advisory continuing mentors. Because of COVID and a lot of companies have closed or they have minimum time to do it. The best thing we did was we just reached out to our local, what is that called? Allison, help me the name on that one.
Somebody in the chat just wrote Chamber and Rotary, and
yes, that was it. The Chamber of Commerce. They have a lot of connection with the community.
And I would second to definitely reach out to your depending on which industry sector there is a gap for. For instance, I have a lot of statewide AME advisory partners that some of which would be willing to serve on local boards, I'm sure. So definitely reach out to your industry sector lead at the California Department of Education to see if they have any specific resources for that. Also, if you're members of CTSOs, I believe CTSOs help support with that work as well.
And you can email me and we can and let me know what industry you're in, and I can give you the contact information for your industry sector for CDE.
Great, thank you, Maria. Oops. Okay, so is there any required documentation to meet CTE advisory and/or Perkins requirements? Another excellent question.
Perkins has their requirement and it is in theirs. They do have a requirement. Allison, we will have to get them connected to whoever their Perkins person is that can go over that, but they do have specific guidelines.
And in the past, what we've done, when I was in the field hosting advisory meetings at the local level, we always, always, always submitted and kept record of a sign-in sheet that was essential to evidence who was there, as well as the agenda. So
Right, and the notes.
And then any notes from the meeting, and those should suffice to meet those
Right.
requirements.
At the local level, our CTE pathways would always use the Perkins guidelines when they did their advisory in my district, our advisory committee meeting.
Great, thank you. So this question from Tiffany, one goal often for advisory committees is to review data about our program. What reports do you recommend? So have you ever, what kind of data specifically I'm asking? Have you had advisory committees review in the past? And Susan, maybe you have some insight into this.
Well, with CPAs, it's different because we have data on that. But with CTE, it depends what the advisory committee are asking data for, and they can get that data from their district. It just depends what you're asking that and what they want.
Yeah, and a lot of that is around, like local workforce data, and if the programs are, if your CTE programs are aligning with high need, high impact jobs, either regionally or in the state, depending on what district
where they are.
Yeah. So,
but it also depends what data they're looking for. What are they looking for? And they can get some of that from their district. Some of it they would have to go on the web for.
Yeah, and Maria mentioned something that I think is really important. Actually, I don't know if it was Susan or Maria, but one of the things that is essential is that they're your advisors. So I've made the mistake in my earlier days of holding an advisory meeting that was me just doing a presentation. So how are they informing our work if we're just standing up, or in this case, Zoom, presenting to them? So that idea of making sure you find the time to bring in their advice and actually apply that advice is really important. I think Susan or Maria mentioned that, but I wanted to actually double back on that one.
Yeah. Well, it's very important. Again, like you said, Susan had mentioned it, is don't talk to them, talk with them. They need to be involved in it. It's like what Susan said, what's in it for them? If you're talking to them, where's their buy-in and what's in it for them, and how are they going to help you with your programs? It's a team effort.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let me make sure I check off the ones I've answered. Give me 1 second here.
Sure.
All right. So another question, another goal can be to get input on curriculum, instruction, and performance tasks, but this can be too deep of a dive. How can it be structured in a way that's approachable for business partners while also getting actionable feedback? I love these questions.
I like that question because it's what I'm hearing is they want to know how they can get their advisory members involved with their curriculum.
Well, and just get actual feedback that they can then go through the iterative process and apply that feedback in design. And so
that's an excellent question. I can tell you because I went through this because I was at a district level. And what we did is we had the advisories look at the curriculum prior to the meeting. They marked where they're saying, this is not what they use in the workforce now. This is what they do use. And they went through it. You take it piece by piece. You can't give them the whole curriculum and expect it one day they're going to go through everything in an hour and a half or however long your advisory meeting. It needs to be broken up in chunks. So when they did that, then they got involved as, okay, this is what the industry is using now, not this. And so they had to create in their curriculum how we're going to update that. So getting them involved, they know what's out there in the business world. You just have to make it reflect in your curriculum. And also what isn't working in your curriculum is no longer working in the business world. And it's easier to do by chunks than it is, here's my whole curriculum. Let's go through it during this meeting.
Yeah, and I'm gonna definitely add that an hour annual advisory meeting is not a way to get this kind of meaningful feedback from advisors. My experience with this kind of work has been on a much more one-to-one basis. If you're working with multiple pathways and multiple business entities, using the breakout approach or the committee approach, where some of those advisory members are curriculum specific and some of those advisory members are data specific, and then you as the coordinator reach out to those people on an individual level to do more personal interaction. That's the only way I've had success in terms of engaging industry in the actual meat of our programs. A 1 hour meeting once a year definitely doesn't cut it, and you don't want to ask people to do too much. So this is where there's just a really fine balancing act. That's a great question.
And Allison, that is an awesome question. And another thought is you can have subcommittees. So you could have a team that's working with you on the curriculum that you present as a whole late throughout the year, or the one time a year that you have a whole committee.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead, and I know I said I wasn't going to deal with the chat, but I just saw Susan responded to Ron, and I think that's a really good question that Ron put over there. So when you just backpedaling on something we talked about earlier, when I said don't talk to them, talk with them, or Susan might have said that, and her answer is great. Ask questions and actually prepare those questions. What we did is we prepared those questions in advance, gave them to them, and these are our essential questions for this meeting, so that they had an opportunity to kind of ruminate over those questions and think about them prior to the meeting, and then that kind of steered the discussion. And so that's been actually the most effective approach that I've experienced in my advisory, because I've gone through a lot of really, lots of fails, and so I think that's a great piece of feedback, Susan. Thank you.
And asking lots of questions, also debriefing. That is so important, to debrief. Constructive criticism to make it better and more engaging.
Yeah, definitely. And that can be done even just through a follow-up Google form.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Laura says, what about the new Perkins 5 requirements, CLNA, data performance gaps? Are those just for district advisories or individual advisories as well?
Well, that's a great question. And I have not read the current Perkins advisory
requirements.
So, and have you, Allison?
Not in that much depth, but what I will say is that all three of us, Maria, Susan, and I, all come from the world of partnership academies. So our advisory requirements are slightly different. In terms of the way we addressed our Perkins advisory, much of that was prepared by our district, and so we had our individual pathway advisory meetings, right? But there was a big district advisory meeting that brought together a representative from each of our pathway advisories. That meeting is when that kind of stuff was dealt with. So that's my personal experience. And that, again, it was that one gung-ho advisor from your pathway advisory meeting who's like, I'm all in, right? And you give those people to your district. And so that was my experience with this, but but I don't know. I actually ran the district Perkins advisory, but I have not read when I was in the district, and I ran the individual, but I have not read the new Perkins 5 because CPAs is different. Yeah. So we'll look into that. And that's actually a great question. Definitely. It is. We can get back to you on that one. Yes, absolutely. So feel free to email us if you don't hear back from us, because that's something I want to look into as well. Karen asked, can you send us those virtual meeting notes you referenced? And I'm going to just say this to the audience. I believe that we're not going to send any mass emails to all registrants, because for these webinars, we've had something like, I don't know, 400 to 500 people register and then 200 or so attend. And so what we're going to do is if you have needs or you want specific documents, please feel free to reach out to us personally via the emails provided, and we will make sure that you get samples of what you need. What are the best practices or models for meeting Perkins Advisory Board requirements? And this may be worth a separate, you know what? Actually, that's a great point. This may be worth a separate webinar because this was not a Perkins specific webinar and none of us are like self-proclaimed Perkins experts. I'll be the first to admit that. I would say that we are going to be planning for a second spring webinar series or winter spring webinar series. And we will definitely be sending a survey out to the field, seeing what you need. And so that's a great suggestion. I think that's a really great suggestion. So I'll just piggyback with that one. Okay, so there's another. What are some of the best answers for the what's in it for me question? What would you recommend we highlight to partners we want to serve on the advisory board?
Susan, I'm going to defer that one to you.
That's
Are
a
you
good
mu-
question. I'm here. I just
Okay.
muted myself. That's a great question because it's a difficult question, but I think if you talk to, I'm in favor of asking questions. So you get a couple of people on your board and have a conversation with them. After Tim Rainey spoke with our board, we had a conversation with the board. Why are you here? What are you getting out of this experience? What do you expect from this experience? And then we kind of build on that. And I don't think we ask our partners enough. What do you want? What do you see in this experience? Because we have ideas that we have about moving our students forward. So that whole thing about asking what's in it for me, turn that around to what's in it for you. It might be we're spending some time at one of your meetings, going around the board and asking them why they're there.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so what are your thoughts on continuing to meet virtually even when we can meet in person again?
Since I have my mic on, I'll answer that and then let Maria and Allison. But it just seems like we're getting more buy-in, we're getting more participation because virtually they don't have to. Our members don't have to travel, they don't have to leave their office. It's easier for a person to set aside an hour and a half, 2 hours than to get in the car, drive across town, find a place to park. In Sacramento is not easy, and then come to the meeting. But if they can do it virtually, I think you're going to get more buy-in. You give up some things, but you gain some other things.
Thank you, Susan. I also will piggyback on that. I also believe that you can have a hybrid where you can do the Zoom and you can do the seat base where you have both. It may take some work to do it, but some people like to meet in person, and then some people have difficulty meeting in person. We have had both with the state. We have virtual prior to COVID. We've had a hybrid type of it, and it works out fine. So it's up to your district and you, but I think my opinion is try a hybrid.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Maria. Sorry, I just realized I wasn't spotlighted or lit so people couldn't see me. I would say the exact same thing. I don't think we're going backwards. I think this idea of having hybrid everything is going to increase participation in our lives and our work. And so I actually think that there's been a lot of silver linings in our rapid adapting to this new tech. And so I definitely agree with Maria on that. All right, so we found, did I? No, I did not. We found that some of our advisors are worried about giving input because they think, okay. So we found that some of our advisors are worried about giving input because they think, well, who are we to give teachers advice? So
My opinion on that is you need to talk to them and let them feel comfortable that their advice is very valued. If it's not for your advisors, you won't know what's going on in the business world and what you need to change. And their opinion is very valuable to you. If they still don't want to give that advice, have them write it where it gives you permission of what they feel. And you repeat that.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to clarify that you're getting advice about am I teaching students in a way that prepares them for your needs, right? So we have advisors because we want to make sure that we're aligned with industry and that we're preparing the workforce for tomorrow, which somebody, I think Laura put in the chat here. So I think that's a really important point, is that you're not asking advisors to tell you how to teach. You're asking advisors to inform that your content is actually still relevant with industry. And I mean, I'm just going to make the statement that our standards for CTE were last updated in 2013. And so this is why it's important to get current industry advice for programs, because there have been a lot of changes since 2013. And so yes, the standards are our foundation and will hopefully be updated in the next few years. That being said, our advisors are really who are helping us stay current with trends in industry. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
And trends in industry changes frequently.
Yeah, exactly.
So having that update. Look at medicine. Medicine changes all the time. So yeah.
Thank you. All right. So do you think it would work to have them create a list in advance of the needed career readiness or essential skills they identify that they can talk about?
I think anything that they can create in advance that you can review and you can discuss is essential. It's important. And also providing that to them, the members, where they can have time to review and have an opinion on it or have a feedback on it. It's important.
And templates. I would say, like, if you want something, make it as easy as possible for people to give that to you, or a Google form or something, just because, they're doing us a favor, right? And so I think that's
for sure.
I think that's important, is key, simplifying things. And in terms, I mean, I would have to say that the hands down and I come from the AME world, but in terms of our advisories, those transferable skills have been the emphasis of many of our hiring entities. And so I think this idea of having advisors prioritize those skills would be really helpful. Yes.
And it's nice to have. I'll piggyback on Allison. I totally agree with you, because I came from the healthcare field, and having those templates where they could just fill in and go, it's better than sending it in the email, because it gives them a place.
So the next question is, can you provide us with information or examples of MOUs created with the advisory board members and industry partners, or letters of intent?
That is a great question. And I think we need to talk to the CTE division.
Yeah, this is a local thing, right? And so your process in terms of formalizing your advisory is really up to the locals.
It's the LEA, your district.
Mm-hmm. So we have not generated any kind of requirements at our level, but I think there might be examples of best practice that we can try and seek out for you. Would you be able to have a webinar for the CTE requirements? Yes, we could. I think there is one, actually, especially since the new essential elements, the 12 elements, have been released. So I believe that CTELO, which is our neighboring office, has in fact done a webinar on this, but I'm not sure if it was CTIG specific. So we will look into this, because I think as we look forward into our webinar planning, what we want to do is make sure you understand how to apply those requirements in a distance or blended learning format. So I think that's where our focus will be if we do something like this. Okay. And then do you have an agenda template that you can share? And this is our last question.
Susan, we have I have an agenda template that I use, but again, it's not a CDE one. It's just an agenda template that I've had for 1,000 years. Maybe not quite 1,000.
Let's reach out. Let's reach out to some of our lighthouse leads.
Okay,
I bet they have things they would really like to share. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so reach out to Maria and Susan if you want some specific examples. You can reach out to me with any questions regarding the webinar series or anything that is CTE and distance learning specific. I'm just going to say to the 95 folks who are still on the line, we're really right now looking for examples of best practice, like what master schedules have worked well for your CTE programs, what are your successes, and how can we share those out with a broad audience? So we would love to hear from you in terms of those conversations, because we're hearing a lot of what's not working. And I know there's got to be some programs in schools that have found some success. So please reach out to me via email and share those stories or master schedule samples or anything that you think would help us inform our work and be better at what we're doing.
Yes, and remember, any documents that we share with you is not CDE's documents. It's just resources that we use for ourselves.
Because all three of us came from the field. So anyways, thank you so much for attending. That will do it for today. And we look forward to seeing you at next week. I think it's on the 28th. CTE Online will be presenting their brand new platform or their revamped platform. And so please join us. Thanks and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you, Allison.
And thanks
Bye.
to our interpreter, who's incredible.
Yes, she's amazing. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.